Magda, welcome.
Hi, Mitch, and hi, everyone else watching and listening.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to be here with you. And we were just like chatting, connecting, and the thing that came up that I love this topic is something on the outside is making me feel. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, like to give a context, you were just sharing that you had taken a sip of coffee and were like, oh, I'm really, jittery or really just up. And it's just, I think for many of us, and understandably so, we feel a certain way and then we immediately look for a reason on the outside versus potentially being aware, oh, I'm about to hit record a podcast. And yeah, I'm just stressing out a bit, right? But that little sip is that thing we can kind of latch onto and be
Mm.
like, oh, that's what's making me feel like this. And yeah, I think we do that quite a lot.
Yeah, that's why I said it, and I was like, it was so funny. We like bust out laughing. I'm like, I just took one sip of coffee, and I'm like, wow, whoo, this coffee. And that's something I've seen in my journey. I see with my clients a lot of like I think it's controlling to feel safe. Like if I can control this thing, then I can feel safe and like I went through that for so many years, like chasing, is it this? Is it this? Is it this? Is it that? Is it, and and that's what I was telling you before hopping on. It's like, oh, I'm finally seeing, the activation, like sympathetic activation, anxiety, whatever you want, overthinking. That was very familiar. But like the shutdown and the fatigue that can come with this healing journey as we unpack some layers, like it just didn't feel like me. Have you ever heard anybody talk about that? Have you felt like that?
Only most of my life.
And what's changed?
No, no biggie. Who's counting? Well, what has changed is definitely finding nervous system work. And
Mm,
I can definitely relate to both finding things on the outside and creating narratives and to be fair, I do think that as human beings we are meaning making machines, and
mm,
not machines is a wrong word. I don't think we're machines at all, but we're meaning making beings.
sure.
So I think to an extent it is very natural that we would look to kind of synthesize whatever is happening into a coherent story that allows us, to move through reality, right? And our experience of ourselves and our lives. And you and I both know, and maybe some of the people that be, watching and listening to this, that the more we live in what we could call unresolved, um, survival responses, energies, repressed emotions, energies, trauma, dysregulation, however we want to call it, the meaning making kind of patterns and pathways might not be the most accurate.
Mm,
And I think it's not a coincidence that one of the first things that we learn with one of the mentors, Irene Lyon, right, that you and I both menteed with, is how to build what we call interoception.
mm,
And interoception is not only the skill of or the ability to feel what's happening on the inside, but it's also properly interpreting what we're feeling. It's not
mm,
just feeling, it's also the interpretation, right?
mm-hmm.
And for many of us, due to our history, sometimes starting really far back, as in, preconception, conception, and all the way through, um, yeah, we have learned that the world is not safe. We have learned that it's not safe to be us,
Mm-hmm.
to feel, to be in connection with ourselves and what's on the outside. And so I think oftentimes that kind of story making becomes, that's our go to versus more being in touch with what's actually there, because that we never got the safety that we needed to actually develop, this capacity and ability to do that.
Mhm.
So yeah, I've definitely done that. I think for me, mostly it's always been most prominent in relationships, and like specifically romantic relationships. And yeah, it's so deeply ingrained that most of the time I don't even realize that I'm doing it until I hit a point where, another layer of what we would call capacity kicks in, or, a bit more regulation or less survival stress in my system, more sense of safety. And then suddenly I look at the same situations, same behaviors, same thought patterns in myself and in others, and I have a completely different understanding of the situation. And it's only then that I can go like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
The way I was reacting, the way I was behaving, the way I was interpreting things, that's maybe not actually the most accurate or sustainable way to look at things. So just like you say, like this sympathetic, anxious kind of, this type of energy, you were more familiar with, and now you're understanding those layers of freeze and kind of shutdown that are also there, and the fatigue and everything else. Like for me, it's, I've been doing the nervous system work, like practicing. Let's say I started in December 2021. So what is it, like 3.5 years? It'll be 4 years this year.
Mhm.
And it's like every few weeks or every few months, I land into a deeper sense of like, oh, wow, this is also masking. Oh, wow. And here I'm also not being authentic. Oh,
Mhm.
wow. Here I'm not actually setting boundaries, even though I think I am. I'm still people pleasing, and I'm still trying to keep peace through, not sharing myself, not expressing certain things. So yeah, it goes really deep. And I think in a way, ironically, the safer I feel and the more regulation I have on board, the more I see how deeply, deeply dysregulated and unsafe I feel around other people. So yeah, it's a mind trip sometimes.
Yeah, it's like I wrote down we're meaning making beings, not machines,
Mm.
and we're wired for safety, and we're also conditioned to fix it, to respond, like put a band-aid on the boo-boo, and here in America it's pop a pill, take your pain pills, take your whatever, and so it's what I hear in that message as we're talking about this is like, don't feel that, right? Like, or go fix it, because that's not good. And so of course we're wired to move away from it, something that's uncomfortable, to fix it, to try to go towards safety. It's so interesting that we use these things that are outside of ourselves. Um, and then, the healing is moving towards the pain and seeing what it can teach us, building this interoception that tells me like what's going on with the body. What does it need? What did it miss out on? What would be comforting to it? And it's like we're relying on the outside that I'm pointing out in the air, the external, because we've like forgotten how powerful we are, or how important that connection to our body is. And yeah, it makes sense that that would be traumatic, and that this like feeling and going back, it's like, oh, here's all these patterns that basically help me feel safe when I didn't know how to, because I didn't even know what safety was or what that looks like. Like that's something for me, like looking back as a child and going, yeah, I never felt safe. I don't even know what that is. And trying to learn that at 40 years old almost, it seems kind of crazy, no?
Yeah. Yeah. And as I heard you talk about it, I actually had this thought that, to an extent, it does make a lot of sense that most of us are looking to the outside, because at the most crucial points of our development, we didn't get from the outside what we needed
Mhm.
to actually build, that solid sense of self and that inner physiologically wired sense of safety. And that we do need to come from the outside, from the moment of conception through, the environment of the womb of our mother, through the birth, and then being an infant, a child. We need that to come in from the outside.
Mm.
So I think that when we get it, or when later as adults, hopefully, we find the right tools and the right people to support us in that deep level of healing, then the more we heal, the more we get it from the outside in the relational field with a therapist, practitioner, the less we actually need to keep on grabbing to the outside, because we're finally getting nourished with what we never got from the environment. So again, kind of ironic, right? That, well, we do need to first get it from our environment so that then we no longer need to search on the outside for things, because that part of our kind of developmental milestone already gets satisfied, and it can complete and transform and morph into a more mature way of being in the world. But the truth is that most of us are just babies in adult bodies. And
That's
I don't
the
mean
picture
it,
I had in my head.
in a pejorative way, right? It's
Yeah.
it's not to like put us down, but physiologically, a lot of us are babies or fetuses that are kind of looped in certain experiences that at the time we didn't have enough support with and enough resource to move through in an optimal way. And so that's why we're grabbing, right? Because a baby or a fetus needs those things to come from the outside. They cannot give them to themselves,
That's what
right?
that's exactly what I'd like to unpack some more, because we kind of talked about this and had a little bit of conversation back and forth offline, of course, about giving ourselves what we need. And you're saying we need to get that. It's like I picture, yeah, the babies, like we're all little babies in adult bodies, and that makes the whole getting old process like not make any sense, right? And it's kind of like we're going back to school. Like I don't remember what that term comes from, but I feel like there's like a TV program or something. It's called like Back to School, but that's what we're doing, right? And so there's all these different programs, modalities. We're going to talk about that maybe if we have enough time. That we both love and enjoy and have experienced together. And I hear you say, we got to, of course, we need that foundational support, that attunement that we didn't get. Is it possible to give it to ourselves? Does it have to be in relation? Like, and maybe give an example of someone who doesn't have access to that, or to that person, that to sit with them, to be that witness, and how can we um, maybe bridge that gap? Is
Yeah,
that
I think
even
that's
possible?
yeah, I think that's a great question. And that's something that I've been sitting with more and more, especially in the past year. Um, because my way into the nervous system work was through, not necessarily self-guided, because through a course where you get audio practices and there is a community, there are moderators and all
Yeah,
of that. So in some ways you're not by yourself, because there's the voice of the person. And I remember at the time that was actually a big resource for me,
yeah,
that voice, the tempo, the wording. I was like, oh my God, this feels so good. So yes, I do think that our voice recording can carry some sort of an energy. So you're not fully alone.
mm,
And yet it's very different to having someone with you, even if it's online. Like
it is.
all the client work I do at this moment is online. And all the therapy that I receive is also online,
Yeah.
right? So we don't
Which how
necessarily
awesome
have
is
to
that
be.
that we can even do that?
It's still I still don't understand it a
Yeah.
lot of the time. Like I understand it, but it's still magic to me that we can do that and truly attune through a Zoom call.
Yeah,
Um,
quantum field. It's all the
fun.
quantum field is what I feel like. There is no separation of space and time. We're in
Yeah,
the field together. You can feel it.
yeah, it's pretty wild. So going back to can we do it by ourselves? For some time I thought yes, and now I'm not quite that sure about it. I think there is a lot that we can do. For
Agreed.
example, through like guided practices, I think when it comes to building interoception, so that ability to notice what's happening on the inside, but also staying in connection with our environment,
Hmm.
which might actually be a very good moment to invite ourselves to do that for a second.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
I,
snap. Nice, right? Nice segue.
yeah, you teach.
So, we were talking with Mitch, that maybe we would start with it, but then we, rushed into the conversation. So, yeah, maybe all of us, and I'm gonna do the same thing, whether we're looking at the screen or maybe just listening, just to give ourselves a moment to look around in a way that actually lets us see what is
What
around.
are we, before we keep going, what's our intention right here? Like, what are we doing?
We're just looking. We're just seeing what's there.
Love it. Okay.
Yeah. We don't have to overcomplicate it. And of course, there's a reason. Very often, when we've had all of those ruptures and insults to our sense of safety, to our sense of relationship, physiologically, we're actually not living in the present moment.
Mm.
Our systems are oftentimes stuck in old, kind of, I see it, understand it as loops, charges. And so just taking a moment to look around and to really see what is there is one of very simple but powerful ways that we can like give this little nudge to our system to start realizing where we are and when we are. And then as you do that, whether you're walking, sitting, lying down, just noticing the parts of your body that are in the connection with the surface that is supporting you. For me, that would be a stool. So just sensing my pelvis in connection with the stool. And maybe you can find one thing that feels easy or neutral to look at right now. And as you do that, you can notice your breath and then notice if it changed in any way, either because maybe you thought that means you should take maybe a deeper breath, or maybe that happened spontaneously. And so just notice how the breath is coming in and out of your body, knowing that we don't have a specific way of breathing in mind right now. We're not trying to control the way we breathe. We're wanting to notice what is. And for many of us, especially if we've been in the world of, let's call it mindfulness or yoga or meditation, we might be used to being told to close our eyes or take a deep breath. So we're doing something different now. We're simply noticing. And for some of us, noticing what is here and what is now might mean that we begin to settle a bit and maybe feel a bit of relaxation or softness come in. And then for some of us, it might be quite the opposite. Some of us might start feeling a bit more agitated. Maybe all we see are the things that need cleaning or tidying up in the space that we're in. For others still, it will be completely boring and it'll be like, what the hell are we doing? Why are we doing this? Just get on with it. Give us some answers. Give us more knowledge. And that's all good.
Yeah.
That's just information. Well, earlier you mentioned that, in healing, we kind of move towards pain. And I think in some ways, this is very true.
Mm-hmm.
And in many ways, actually, trauma healing at a deep level can be very gentle.
Yeah.
It needs to be slow. And yes, pain will come up and suffering will come up because they're there. Most of it lives in our bodies still.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about going headfirst and jumping into the most painful and most difficult things, which in many healing spaces, that still is kind of the trajectory. And that is the understanding. With what we do, we mostly first focus on building what we call this capacity. So we actually don't want to jump into anything big and painful. If it happens, it happens. And how can I notice that, oh, yeah, I have this beautiful plant over here and the leaves have different colors and oh, there's another leaf coming. And okay, this is the stool I'm sitting on. And as soon as I slow down, I can feel my breath
Yep.
shifting. And I'm not doing that. And that's not my aim.
Right. So it's
My
not
aim
trying
is
to
just to
fix.
notice
It's
it.
more about like being with.
Yeah. And it's very easy to say being with. For many of us,
Yes.
noticing our breath, that's already a threat. It feels like too much. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with us if any of those suggestions and kind of cues don't feel good. Because for many of us, we need to give ourselves that experience at least a few times, and ideally with someone who's there with us that we can connect with, in order for us to start experiencing something different, and in order for us to not be experiencing it as something dangerous, because historically it was for many of us. Historically, being in connection with ourselves and also with the environment at the same time, that was a no-go. So that's why we just don't do it.
It's so wild. And it's almost like when I look at my childhood and think about that and what I didn't get, it's not that it was intentional. Nobody was trying to hurt me. It's just this is such a new thing for humans that we're talking about. To be actually allowed to be, or to, I don't know if allowed is the word, but like encouraged to be human, to be in our body, to be listening to our body. It's like instead, it's like feels like it's designed to go, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. Pay attention to this, fix that, like, and all these things that we're talking about that are healing, that is connecting to our body because it feels so dangerous. That makes sense. Like that's the exact opposite of what that's like. That's bad. We need to fix that.
Yeah. And I think, it's pretty new to us modern Westerners because in other places of the world that are maybe not as industrialized and still a lot more nature based and community based, although I do know that there's, less and less of that available.
Mhm.
But in those places in different cultures, it's not necessarily so.
Tell us
And
about that. That's something I hear you talking about a little bit is like your interest. I'm not exactly sure what you're doing with it, but I know you're interested in like indigenous populations and working with that. And I've been since you said that, even term like indigenous cultures and whatever it was that we were talking about, I've started to see that everywhere. And so my impulses right now are going like, tell me about that.
well, I'm no expert.
Sure,
But
sure.
let's start there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like 11 years ago, it was already. I was at a point where I was very disillusioned with the world of what we call self-development in the West, basically. Let's call it West, although, in the dominant culture.
Sure.
And I had been a part of that world for a while, both as a creator, like public speaker, author, and as a person who went to different self-development events with, like the top people like the Tony Robbins kind of
Oh
full
yeah.
set of events
You and
and
me
all
both,
of that.
sister.
Yeah. And I remember that was a time where I just started really massively questioning both that world and what we call spirituality.
Mm.
And I knew that wasn't it. Like what we're being presented as spiritual, or as self-development. I've kind of come to understand it's ego development, not
Oh my gosh.
self-development.
Yeah.
And and also realizing that, and again, now with the nervous system knowledge on board, that makes complete sense that we would be like trying to ascend all the time and escape the body even more, right? Because we just don't know what it actually means to be a body
And
and
being
to be a
traumatized is
living
being out of
body.
the body, no?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Of course we would follow that.
like calls to like,
Yeah.
right? If you're already disconnected to a degree, it's going to be so much more attractive to disconnect
Yes.
even more and
Hmm.
to believe, again, meaning making, to believe that all of that doesn't matter, that spirituality
Oh
is
yeah.
somewhere here
Yeah.
and not in your very blood and bones.
Yeah. It's
Right.
fairy juice. It's not real. It's like the more
Yeah.
healing work I do, like this is always funny to me. I'm sure some people can appreciate this. When uh when I got into this work, somebody's like, "Let's, Mitch, you're overwhelmed. Let's sit down and do some tapping." And I was like, "Go fuck yourself. Give me a Xanax." And so the more I do this work, the more I'm like, "Oh man, all the woo-woo fairy dust people were right. Like it is really, it's very simple. It's not, well, I was about to say it's not complex. It's extremely complex, nuanced, and it's very simple."
Yeah. Yeah, because, in some ways it's the most natural thing in the world, right? We were, born to be in connection. It's just that through how generations and generations and generations of our ancestors, lived and what they experienced and what they didn't get the chance to heal, we kind of get an inheritance of both incredible resilience and adaptability and also of trauma and past hurts and pain and suffering that many of us are kind of cleaning out and clearing out in our lineages, right?
Well,
So let me just go back to that because you had asked about the indigenous stuff. So I was already very disillusioned with that and also with this movement.
The ego
And
development.
yeah,
Yeah.
that it was like that was considered self-development, like somehow going up. And then I had already started being more and more aware about the environmental destruction in the world, the social injustice, the kind of geopolitics. Geopolitics were always a part of my interests ever since I was a teenager. But then, like, I started really educating myself about a lot of really difficult, dark, and painful things in the world. And I really just started feeling all of that. And at the
Mm.
time, I didn't have the capacity to deal with it. So obviously, that was like a huge, difficult, and dark period, very depressive period in my life. And at the same time, for part of that time, I was living in Hawaii. And already before I moved to Hawaii, I knew that, the whole narrative of Hawaii being just another American state was not, was not really was not really quite right,
Yeah.
under international law and their history. And I knew there was an indigenous population, indigenous culture. And so while I didn't have a lot of contact with it, I had enough and I heard enough and I felt enough while living there and meeting with different indigenous folk that it really helped me build a new framework for how I move through the world, for how I see my role in the world as a human and as an earthling, let's call it.
Yeah.
And so even before Hawaii, but like in Hawaii, that really solidified for me. I understood that self-development was not like this, but it was like a concentric circle. So actually, self-development was understanding that myself is a lot more than just my body. And
Mm.
so then the care for the environment, for more than human life, for other human lives, like that is part of self. And that is the true self-development because myself becomes bigger. My
Yeah,
sphere
I
of
was imagining
this,
it of almost a dropping in. If ego development is this, I almost like I was listening to one of our SPT things today. It's talking about soul retrieval. That's almost like what I was thinking about is like it's a dropping in, and you're saying it's more of a. It makes so much sense though because as we heal others, and it goes out. Is that what you mean?
no, I mean more that I begin to understand that myself extends way farther than my own body. And so my care, my empathy, my protection also extend beyond just me.
Mm.
So at the time, that was the piece of the process. And at the same time, I did realize that I guess what we could call indigenous spirituality, that it is a very much a downward process, right? And it's a very rooted and grounded and literally like your hands in the soil tending to land that we're stewards of type of spirituality. It's not something that's just kind of here, same as activism, same as, being, I don't know, an environmental or social justice activist, that it's not just kind of here. It's like it's in everything we do, it's in our body. And to me, also, somatic work and deep nervous system healing is both very ecological work and it's very spiritual work because the way I sense it, the way, my experiences is that this is soul manifest, right?
Mm.
So it's not like I have a soul and a body. No, like this is my soul come into form.
Oh, I like that.
So doing somatic work is doing soul work and spirit work for
And
me.
it's bringing it back. What does that make sense? Like when I'm saying that, it's almost like because I heard that soul retrieval, and maybe it's pieces and parts. It's like the
Yeah.
exiled parts that we said or somebody said don't belong, that are afraid, they're scared, they're terrorized, whatever. We're reintegrating with those.
I don't have experience with soul retriever work specifically, so I
Me
can't really
neither.
speak to
That
it.
word just is me neither.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
word
but
is, it feels kind of like what we're talking about.
yeah, like, one of the women that I've been learning from quite a lot lately is Shiryanamans themselves.
Perfect,
And
because I want to know all about that.
yeah, so she's a therapist, like pre and perinatal therapist. She has a PhD in what we call pre and perinatal psychology. And she's also really fascinated with embryology, but not embryology as we might know it from, like, medical, just biological perspective, but it's like kind of spiritual embryology and like embodied embryology. And there's I guess they call him like a spiritual embryologist.
Embryo, so
There's
inside of mom. Is that what you mean?
embryo, yeah. So embryo is like after conception, I think it's like up to 9 weeks.
Okay.
That's the stage that we call the embryo, and then I guess in English we would go into the fetus.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
sounds right.
And so there's this amazing embryologist called Jaap van der Wald. He's Dutch. And Shiriana talks a lot about what she calls the embryological potential. So, all of that energy, all of that wisdom, all of that potential that first is just, kind of a sperm and an egg coming together, forming one cell. And then from one cell, hello, here's Magda, and here's Mitch, and here's everyone who's listening to us, right? Like those beautiful, complex, versatile, resilient
Powerful.
bodies, right? That are, I don't know. I think life is just amazing and brilliant. But it all starts with that little cell, right? And so that cell holds within it all this, like the whole potential of who we can be, right? And then as we go through all those developmental stages in the womb, and then birth, and then on, that potential, a part of it at least, might get kind of unexpressed because we weren't resourced enough to go through those milestones in an optimal way, in a safe, nourishing, welcoming way. For many of us, that's not the experience of our in utero life. Like in mass conversation, we kind of have this idea that babies are born like tabula rasa, like the kind of a clean slate, right? And, and they're completely full of love and full of this, and to a degree, yes, on certain levels. However, if our first experiences of life, so like incarnation, conception, implantation, also called nesting, so that's when when we kind of attach to the wall of the womb and we start eating our way through. And then there is the moment of discovery when the mother, or the parents or the caretakers learn that there is a pregnancy. And then I guess birth would be the next big one in this sequence. Like if at each of those moments, and then obviously throughout the whole 9 months, the environment that we're developing in is again not safe, relaxed, nourishing, and welcoming, but full of stress, biochemically toxic, right? Then that's already what informs our whole development. And so when we're born, we're not a tabula rasa. We already have all of those imprints. And that already sets the tone for everything else that will happen in our lives. Right. So even like nervous
Pause you right
system.
there. So we help me understand. So we come in with these imprints already, and the imprints are human conditioning from other generations.
Yeah, they're emotional, relational, mental, physical. right? Because
Stressor.
if already as a fetus, you're fighting for your life and you're in a hostile environment,
Wow, never heard that before.
well, in some ways, we're constantly fighting for survival, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But, many of us never make it. Like a lot of pregnancies never make it. And I don't mean even the ones that we know of that women have miscarriages and, other complications. I mean the ones that never actually get to nest and implant, for example, right? So the more kind of difficult and unwelcoming our first environment, the more we learn at that, one cell, two cells, however many cells, we already learn that the world is not safe,
We're
that
surviving.
we're not wanted, right? Because if a mother, for example, is hesitant, maybe that she really wants a child but she's just lost her job,
Hmm.
or the partner just left, or had an accident, or whatever that is, and suddenly there's fear, like, how am I going to do this?
And the baby
And
is feeling
even,
that directly.
sorry,
I said, and the baby is feeling that fear, that lack of resource.
the fetus, yeah, the fetus is already feeling that.
Wow.
Yeah, so that already shapes so many of our imprints. And then, of course, what happens in childhood and what happens in families and, schools, society, all of that is important. And it already is layers atop of those original imprints.
It's so much. It's so deep.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you've worked through your childhood stuff and your shock traumas, and oh wait, here's this embryonic phase stuff that you hadn't even thought of. And would you say the soul comes into the earthly experience with mom like as a pristine kind of uncaring stuff, but there's karma there too, right? There's karma and let's just say ancestral baggage, maybe, or no?
Like my understanding is that I think that's a whole other
Yeah, yeah,
territory that we're going
yeah,
into
yeah.
now.
I mean, we're just
Um,
talking hypothesis here, but
my current understanding is that there is like signature that we have. There is an essence that is there when we incarnate. And again, in many different cultures, there are practices for future parents to connect with the souls of their children before conception.
oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So that's why when we talk about pre and perinatal work, we actually say it's preconception. It's not even at the moment of conception, it's already preconception, right? Because even if we don't consciously have those rituals and practices as a culture, as families, like our conception already happens in an energetic emotional matrix of the relationship of our parents, right?
Hmm.
Of their relationships within themselves, with their own bodies and identities and experiences, and then between them, and and on and on and on it goes. So I think there is, like, at this level, at least Earth side, and preconception, the way I understand it, there is an essence and there is a signature. And I also know, I don't really know how that happens, but I also know that, yeah, we do carry past life experiences in our bodies right now. Um, yes, we carry experiences of our ancestors, which makes, to me, that just makes complete sense, even, biochemically, biologically, physiologically, that makes sense, right? Because
Yeah.
the sperm and an egg, that's material,
Hmm.
right? And it has that energy. Um, and our own past lives, right? So when we were in a different incarnation. which I didn't really used to believe in. Like, I would listen to people talking about their past life stories. I was like, it also depended on the person. Some people would talk about it, and I was like, yeah, I believe you. Like,
Yeah.
I completely believe that that's what happened for you and that you remember those experiences and so on. And some people would talk about it, and I would just like, I just wouldn't buy it. Maybe not necessarily because they were lying, but I just like, I could sense something that wasn't really true and grounded and, authentic for me, maybe in the way the person was sharing their experience or the context.
Yeah, you can tell they're potentially disconnected and possibly performing this story.
Maybe, maybe. Like it just didn't feel right. Like I just didn't trust it. And, since starting this work, I've had so many experiences that it's really hard for me to talk about or put into words or, you know, sometimes in some of my friends, my closest friends are people who also do this work. So maybe they might have had similar experiences themselves, or they're just a lot more kind of open and accepting of those things. But I'm pretty sure that if I were to share, some of the experiences I've had either by myself that kind of come out spontaneously, somatically, or in my therapy sessions, but probably a majority of people just wouldn't believe it.
Oh
Like,
yeah, I was
because
in that camp for a long time.
and it's I probably wouldn't have believed it either. It's just that I've lived it and I've
Same.
experienced it and I felt it and I've processed it and I've expressed it, right? So I know it's real because I experienced it. Or at least real for me, right? In the moment of processing whatever it is. So yeah, and at the same time, I think like the fabric of our essence is light and love and goodness. And I think there are many stages that, just kind of don't have to, but can pack that goodness and light and love into layers of many other things. And I think, healing is kind of a process, ideally slow, um, gentle, well supported, relationally process of gently bringing, safety and connection so that we can start looking underneath those masks. And then over time, more and more, those masks are just not needed because we are getting the things that we need to be expressing that kind of original embryonic potential or soul potential or however we want to call it.
I love it. It's like we come into this world. There's a lot of stressors. It seems like there's a lot of conditioning and lack of knowledge that goes into, and maybe it's by design, that's a whole other conversation, to cripple the human potential that we're talking about that does exist in these embryonic stages and before that. It's like society is set up to keep us sick, to keep us stressed, to keep us separate, and the education that is needed to understand what needs to be there to encourage this potential rather than squashing it is the best way I know how to suppressing it
Yeah.
to redirecting it to this soul journey to not listen to our bodies to depend on the external and the healing work is welcoming these parts back, um, sitting with yourself, moving very slowly and titrated and learning and understanding this this nervous system lens. I mean, for me, I can say for 20 years, I was I guess self-improvement, trying to improve my health. And a lot of those things helped, and I certainly use those when I'm working with clients as tools for the right moment. And before the nervous system lens, before seeing it through that lens, it's all just guesswork and performance and which means look at me, I can help you, or look at me, I have knowledge or experience, but I'm not, it's not a natural impulse that comes up. And so that's tough, man. That's a lot. I mean, I think that's what I think is so important that we're talking about early developmental stuff and education. And it just reminds me of this. I was listening to our SPT thing this morning. I was hearing some of the women in the group describe some experiences with their kids and how well attuned they are. And I'm just sobbing, and I'm like, man, like that sounds so nice. It's so amazing that we can take this information that is fairly new to human, maybe in indigenous cultures, but new to the Western world, and we can start to apply that for ourselves and for others, and heal the next generation, and give them more of an opportunity to express this potential that who knows was untapped. And I guess I'd like to pivot this a little bit. I know we've got 10 or 15 minutes, something like that, and thing I love about you that I've watched, that I see in myself, that I see in Irene, is this appetite for learning, and knowing that there's no one size fits all, that there's many things that create healing, that and we maybe follow our impulse into those areas. But I know we've worked with Irene together, and I know you've worked with Steve, and you just mentioned Stephen Terrell. Stephen Terrell, is that right?
Mhm.
Yeah, Stephen
Yeah.
Terrell.
Interoception.
I was
Mhm.
getting him mixed up with Stephen Porges. But and then this pre-perinatal, like what are some of the modalities that have helped you, and how do you share those with clients?
Hmm. So the way I started was, I think, maybe potentially the same way you started with Irene Lyons, kind of self-paced courses. And then, before I found this work, I already knew I wanted to train in working with people as a practitioner, as a therapist, but I just couldn't find kind of the right people, the right modalities, the right institutions. Like I was considering, becoming a psychotherapist, but then through my deep dives into deep ecology, eco-psychology, and many realms that are not part of the psychotherapeutic paradigm in the West, I was like, I will disagree with probably like half of what they teach me. Like it doesn't make sense to go into it. And I remember the first day I logged into SBSM, which is one of Irene's courses, and I had this huge somatic experience, and understanding that one day I would create something really amazing based off of, the things that I would be learning and experiencing with her. So I did that pretty intensely for a while. And because I already knew I wanted to train, I was looking for different options. And because I'm based in Central Europe, in Poland, so we don't have as many modalities and teachers here available and trainings as there are in the States, because most of the teachers that are well known are American or Canadian at this point, or at least, in the sphere that I've been kind of in touch with. And I was doing, actually, before SPT, which is the mentorship that we just did, I did a beta version of the SPT with Irene. So that was back in 2023. And one of my colleagues, I was sharing with her that, I'm looking for trainings, but I don't have the means to, the resources to be traveling to the States for it. And she's like, oh, Steve Terrell, whom I had known as one of Irene's teachers because she mentions him in her different educational videos and her programs. He teaches in Ireland. I was like, I could do Ireland.
Yeah.
And so I trained with Dr. Stephen Terrell, as you said, was also one of Irene's teachers from way back when. And he
That's touch
developed,
work, right?
sorry?
That's called touch work, right?
It's the modality is called transforming touch. So yes, it is it was created for physical touch. However, it's not body work. There's no manipulation, there's no, you like the touch that is there is literally just this. It's like a very gentle touch of presence, basically. And so I trained with him in this modality that he developed, transforming touch. And yeah, so far those are my, and then the mentorship with Irene. So far those are my kind of official tools. So I do one-on-one work with clients. As I said, I do it all online. So I have, folk from all over my country and some people from abroad that I work with. And then I also, in May this year, so May 2025, I started offering small somatic online groups. And whether it's the groups or one-on-one sessions, I combine like my kind of the backbone of what I do is transforming touch.
Okay.
So it is a modality that is developed specifically to support early developmental ruptures.
Okay.
On the level of the physiology. So it's not talk work, it's not body work, it's not like Reiki. We're not taking any energy out of anyone, we're not putting energy into anyone. We're literally there supporting the client's physiology, organs, glands, and other systems and structures in the body. And with transforming touch, we can also do work with what we call primitive reflexes.
Okay.
So those are our reflexes that start developing in the first trimester of pregnancy. And there's, depending on the, I guess, approach, they say there are, I don't know, I think 20, 30, or even more primitive reflexes. And so they're kind of tied in with different developmental stages. Both in utero at birth and then the first, year of life, let's say. So that's what transforming touch is, and that's kind of the base. And then I call it sprinkling it. So I sprinkle it with neurosensory practices, which is more the work that I've learned with Irene, which is more active work on the part of the client. Because what is really important in transforming touch and what is very different to many other modalities, also somatic modalities, is that the client doesn't have to do anything. They're just there receiving support.
Which would happen if you were a kid, right?
Which is what should have happened when we were, embryos, fetuses, babies, and so on.
That makes sense.
So you wouldn't ask, an infant or a fetus to do anything or to track anything,
right. Yeah.
or to name anything, right? Because it's all pre-verbal and it's all very organic. And so we're just there. And, through the practitioners, we could call it kind of platform, nervous system platform, right? So through where my system is at and my regulation, during transforming touch, the client's system can kind of reach for what they need.
Okay.
So I'm just kind of there with them, supporting the different parts. And whatever happens, happens. Like in transforming touch, we don't do any tracking that we might know more from somatic experiencing type of work. There's a deep underlying understanding that healing happens when we're in the right brain. And analyzing
right brain.
Right brain.
Okay.
Yes. So that's the feeling, the being. Analyzing, naming things, looking for words. So even like the SciBAM model, right? Which is great for working with some things, but that's being in the left brain. You need, right? Because you're thinking, you're naming, you're talking. Whereas when we're in the right brain, or when we're more in what we would call this in nervous system speak, right? Like this parasympathetic low tone dorsal, or we could call it immobilization without fear, or we could call it rest, digest, repair, right? When we're in that state, that's when like this deep healing happens. So And transforming touch, while we might sometimes talk with the client throughout the work, the idea is to simply be there and as much as possible just kind of drop into the sensations they experience. And for many people we have to titrate that, and with some people I start doing literally, I've had sessions where I've done 5 minutes, 4 minutes of transforming touch work, right? And with others I'll do 32 minutes because we're all different. So this is transforming touch. And then neurosensory practices, I start with that usually first to also teach the basics of orienting, just noticing yourself. Are you comfortable? Do you need anything? So resourcing, basically, it's like teaching people in a fairly organic way how to resource, how to take care of themselves. And yeah, there is a bit of talk, a bit of psychoeducation depending on what's needed. And then we move into TT. So I usually have like this neurosensory, a bit of talk, and then TT. TT stands for transforming touch. And it's a very similar process when I do it in a group. Of course, it's different in the sense that it's not tailor-made to the person.
Right.
And it's kind of holding the whole group space, and the check-in looks a bit differently. But the tools I use are very similar. And then for myself, last year, I started a healing, process with a practitioner, a therapist who's deeply trained and deeply embodied in pre and perinatal work in Ray Castellino lineage. So Raymond Castellino was one of the, because he's passed already, one of the pioneers of pre and perinatal somatic work. He developed a way of working that is called the womb surround. So those are workshops for a few people, small groups, where like people go into their birth or in utero experiences and are held in the relational field of the group, of the practitioner, the assistant, and they kind of go and heal those imprints. So I've been with a practitioner who's trained in that, and thanks to all the first interoception capacity building work that I've done through Irene's tools, and then beginning more healing the relational attachment wounding with transforming touch, because that's not layers that we can do by ourselves.
Okay.
I've come to a point where my system, my body, I am pretty primed, so that when I meet with my therapist in the pre and perinatal space, a lot of things organically happen with my therapist just being there, not even necessarily doing anything or saying anything. Sometimes I have sessions where out of 75 minutes there's maybe like 5 to 10 minutes of talk at the very end. And before that it's just me organically coming into different things, because I'm more and more able to recognize that there is a relational field and that there is someone with me that is safe. And so it's okay for me to start letting go and diving into the things that were just not available before. And just like you mentioned, you had like 20 years of self-development and biohacking and all of those things, and then you found the nervous system work more via what Irene offers. I didn't have I had like 10 years of self-development and all of those things, and psychotherapies and all sorts of different ways of trying to find healing and ease and better relationships and all of that. When I started exploring the pre and perinatal work, like I started going through the same process that I first did when I found nervous system work.
Oh, really?
Because while a lot of it is, it goes hand in hand, in some ways, the pre and perinatal world, or at least Ray Castellino's lineage, the way I've been experiencing this work and also studying it little by little through courses and books. And, I also record interviews. So I have, for example, recorded conversations with Shariona already. I've started realizing that, yes, nervous system work so important, capacity building, interoception building, all of those things. And the nervous system developed already in a very rich context. And there are many things that happened before the nervous system started developing that are already imprints that are deeper, than just how, not just because it's a hugely complex and complicated system, right? Or systems, because we have many different nervous systems. But there are things that are deeper and kind of more foundational than even kind of, autonomic nervous system regulation. So I'm at this, in this space where, yeah, I'm just again getting a completely new lens and seeing some of the more intervention based work as like somatic work as having its place in time for sure.
Yeah.
And understanding that there are actually some imprints and some layers that we will not get to through this type of work, that it needs to be deeply relational, and we need a practitioner who understands and like understands what they're seeing.
Right, because we can't do
we
that.
need we need accurate reflection. As babies, that's what we needed. We needed to be seen for who we are, welcomed, loved, appreciated, and also reflected. And many of us didn't really, when we looked into our mother's eyes or father's eyes, or whatever caretakers were available, we did not necessarily see that reflected. And again, not through ill will or someone necessarily wanting to hurt us. It's just because those people never got those experiences when they were little, right? And like on and goes. And so we now, as adults, can go into those healing spaces and those healing relationships with good practitioners who, first of all, embody the work because they've done deep dives into their own processes and can now knowledgeably and compassionately and spaciously be with us in all of those experiences. So yeah, it's interesting.
I'm getting this image. Thank you for sharing that. That makes so much sense. And I'm getting this like image of like the healing space, and it's kind of like here here in the States we have a Golden Corral. Okay, it's like this disgusting buffet. So
Okay.
it's funny for anybody that hears Golden Corral, but I see it as a buffet, as healing as a buffet. Some things you can do that are very basic in the beginning. You can pick and play and learn and do those things somewhat on your own. And then there's like certain stations that are really need to be done with someone. So that may be like an omelet station. So like you really want to, if you want an omelet, like you really need to go over here and work with someone that knows how to make omelets. And if you if you want a salad, like you can go over here and build you a salad. It's pretty harmless. You can learn about yourself and get some information. And then maybe you want to put a steak on that. So you go to the carving table, but you can't do that. You need someone to cut a steak for you and put it on there and know the right temperature. And so it's in community. And here's another one. And then like we can't do this on like silent lunch. Silent lunch is like timeout lunch, like you're in trouble, right? Like that doesn't work. That's you need community. So you want to go sit at the table and be a part of that community and share these things and observation. And that's what being in the community with Irene was for me is we can have these conversations on the side that don't make me feel alone because I'm like, hey, did you get some steak? Like, do you like your steak? Is it cooked right? And it's like, no, mine fucking sucks, you know? Like, oh, damn, mine sucks too. So like we need to go back to a different, so it's like getting those experiences in community, in connection, having some of those resources and homework that we can get from these places that we can, oh, like I was, something that's really helpful for me this week was thinking about nature and how much nature has seen all the emotional stuff that humans they've observed it, right? It's been here for millions of years, if you will. And I was sharing this with a client, and it's like, think of fire. Fire is cleansing, right? Fire is got to burn all the way through, just like activation would. And so, can we bring in nature and say, hey, like I don't know what to do here. Like, maybe I'm having an experience on my own. Something big is coming up. I don't have someone to go sit with in this moment, yet it's still here. And so it's like, how can I call on nature and say, like, hey, can I get some of that wisdom? Like, how can I know that I'm nature? As much as we want to pretend that we're not, we are. So how can I call on that and say, hey, I feel this fire in me, and I've built enough capacity that it's no longer scares me, that this is my body, this is my reaction. And if I can sit with this, if I can be with it without trying to fix it or change it or do the right exercise, if I can literally just hold and be there with presence, kind of like you're doing with the touch, can I hold myself and tell myself I'm gonna be here, I'm not going anywhere? Can we encourage that fire, sit in it until it actually goes to completion, and now it's out? So I love that you shared all that, and I want to give you an opportunity and say, I know that you've got a course coming up, and you're combining some of these things, transforming touch, different somatic tools, SPT stuff that we've learned from Irene, into a group coaching program. Tell us what that looks like, maybe who that's for. And when that's coming out. And I'm gonna obviously want to share it. We can put it in the show notes. I don't know how many spots you have, but people that are interested, so they can reach out to you.
Sure, thanks. Yeah. So I call it more like support groups. They're not necessarily a course, even though there is psychoeducation as
Mm.
part of it. And it's not really coaching. I'm not a coach. I haven't trained as one. So it's literally like coming in, doing some neurosensory stuff, doing check-ins if people want to. There is no pressure, no obligation to share anything. Like, we might be seen and heard, or we might completely stay kind of on the outskirts of actively kind of communicating during the meetings. And then we move into my offering and people receiving transforming touch. And so this is the first time I'm doing an English speaking open group. And it's going to start in October. We're going to do 9 weeks. The groups that I do in Polish, they're 12 weeks. And if there's interest, we can just continue next year and maybe have a longer cohort. It's between 5 and 8 people, so minimum 5, max 8. It was important to me that it's also priced in a way that is accessible, because a lot of this work is still very much behind a paywall. And it's not necessarily because the practitioners want to make it expensive, but to be fair, like depending on where we are in the world and our economist currencies, cost of training and all of that, we know oftentimes it's really not accessible to a lot of people. So when I do those group offerings, like it's pretty important to me that it stay intimate and affordable. So hopefully that's how it is. And yeah, registration is open. So for sure, if you want to share the link, I'd be grateful, and I'd be happy to support anyone who might want to join. And yeah.
Well,
it's a good
one
it's
of
a
the
good time. It's a
one
good
of the
time.
reasons.
One thing that I can say is that it's not necessarily a good choice for someone who's in an active state of crisis. So if someone is really, going through the thick of a very recent, overwhelming event, if being in a group doesn't feel safe, if, having potentially your camera on doesn't feel safe, if we're in a flare up of a mental condition, then it would be more advisable to seek out one-on-one support, which can be a lot more titrated and
Yeah.
really just a different container. And what I find is that different things will happen and come out when I'm by myself, when I'm in a one-to-one situation, and when I'm in a group.
Yeah.
And I know, from the feedback that I've gotten so far from the people that have been in my current groups that started in May and we're going to finish next week, last week of July, is that even for some people who do not feel comfortable sharing and engaging actively in communication with the group, like it's very supportive for them to listen to the experiences of other people. And I also use, the group context as a part of our neurosensory explorations. And like, can you take your time in a group? Can you really, if you need to keep your eyes closed or open for longer than other people, can you allow yourself that? It's very easy once we've been doing this work for a while to do it by ourselves. After a while, it's pretty okay to do it one-on-one with a trusted practitioner. And when we're a group of virtual strangers, can I still do that? Right. So those are just different containers where different layers of stuff can come up.
Mm-hmm.
So I find that groups are really great in that way. And also I think that in some ways, for some people, it might feel safer for their nervous systems, for their, bodies, physiologies, because there isn't a person that is like focused solely on them. It's,
Oh, yeah,
it's
I get that too. That makes sense.
yeah. So I think for some people, it might be actually a really good starting point if they don't want to go into a one-on-one process or maybe can't afford it at this time, or they just want to check out like, okay, what are those modalities? What is this even about? Um, and
Absolutely.
yeah, and if anyone's, doing more type of SE type of work, or maybe someone's in psychotherapy, and they're looking for something to supplement it and bring in that somatic piece for the early experiences, then that might be a good way to kind of get a taster as well.
Yeah, I'm someone who's been interested in touch work. We've talked a bunch about it. I had not a great experience when I didn't have the capacity, and I think what you shared about your way of doing it. There's so many things that you told me about transforming touch. Is that one, oh, it can be titrated. That's great to hear. Two, this left brain versus right brain thing, like I think providing, and I know if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in your course you mentioned to me that there's going to be some education the first couple of weeks, and I see that as so valuable. Is that true? First off,
Yeah, and because I don't like, sometimes the people that join have had experience with nervous system work, some have not. So also just to make sure that people know what's happening, why it's happening,
yeah,
not only in the context of like, why are we doing the things we're doing, and how does transforming touch actually work, and why do we support the adrenals, and what the hell is the brainstem, and
right.
what does it have to do with anything, right?
Mhm.
So, I think that's important. And another part of the education is what might start coming out and what you might start experiencing. And also that if you don't experience those things, that's also okay, and why that might be. So there's also like psychoeducation, not just in the sense that, what is the nervous system and the different branches and the window of capacity, or what others call window of tolerance, Like we look at those concepts, and for me, a big part of this work is just normalizing things, normalizing symptoms, normalizing behaviors. That's one of the things that I really love in transforming touch. It's also, you know, we know it with Irene and with Seth, is that we don't pathologize
Right.
behaviors, people, states. Um, so yeah, so that's a big part of it as well.
And I love that because, you know, when I had my experience, you know, low capacity, I had a lot of knowledge about the nervous system and healing, though not of healing touch. And sometimes I think because of my knowledge, not the embodiment, we can hear the knowledge, we can if we don't see the embodiment and we're just going with what someone's telling us, and if that information is not shared, I know that I was like going into my lack of safety big time because it was very uncertain. You know, what's going on here? What are we doing? And it was like, you know, be quiet because we don't want to talk. But now understanding, you don't want to be in your, I think it was the left brain or right brain. We don't want
Yeah,
to be.
and the left brain. And we also understand that when we're not feeling safe, a lot of us need to talk, and that's also okay.
Yeah.
Over
Yeah.
time, we'll just not be talking as much. But it's completely fine if, you know, if in a one-on-one session someone needs that, because
Mhm.
that just means that's just information. Being here in silence with you is not safe for me. So
Mhm.
let's talk. Okay,
Right.
great, let's talk.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. I'm excited. And if and thank you so much for coming on today. It's been awesome chatting with you as always.
Yeah.
Being my second episode here, this feels like it flowed really well. I really enjoyed the neurosensory exercise. I noticed you know, that's what we started with in the beginning. And I noticed in the beginning it was like all of a sudden, you know, it's like I said, it's second podcast, a little bit of activation coming in. We were blaming the coffee, and and as soon as we dropped into that, I immediately went. I love auditory orienting, so listening, and everything got really quiet. I noticed my jaw started chattering, and I was just like, "Oh, there's that." And I bet if you rewind back to that, you can see me drop in. So it's like I felt the overwhelm, I felt the jaw chattering, and then all of a sudden the spontaneous breath came in, and boom, I was back here. So that's one of the things that we're looking for is maybe connecting more with our body, our environment, the people. Maybe it's settling, maybe it's not. Maybe we notice more things, and like you said multiple times today that I just love. It's just like it's normal, and that's okay. And there may be activation, there may be this, and I think the more we can normalize these symptoms, these sensations that we've been taught to rush in and fix and that they're bad, the more we can normalize that, the more I just feel myself like relax. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Yeah, this is cool. You know, and the more we can allow and accept the things that are happening in our body, I think the more we can settle, the more our brain and nervous system is prioritizing this thread of, hey, we got to keep looking at this, and the more we normalize, it's great. So I really appreciate you coming on today, being my second guest. Um,
Thank you for the invitation.
of course. And as we're wrapping up, like, where can people find you? How do they, if they're, I'm going to put this link in the show notes. And like Magda said, you know, this is only a couple people going in this one. If, you know, I'm sure it's going to be a success. So maybe we can get on the next round or whatever. But definitely, when Magda lets us know here in a second, definitely reach out to her and connect with her. And I know she's active on the social media and the internet. So, again, thank you, Magda.
You're very welcome. And yeah, I can spell my name and surname, but you know, being Polish, I think it might be a bit difficult for people to remember. But I'll do it anyway. So you can find me on my website is magdabebenek .pl. So it's MAGDABEBENEK so it will be easier if you just put it in the description. And yeah, if you know anything that you've heard today caught your interest, I'm very open to connecting. So you can always send me an email. And if anyone's interested and joining the group. If you have any questions, also let me know. I'm here to help, not necessarily to convince you to join, but to give you some information so that you can decide whether that's something that might be good for you right now or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that's what it's all about, just figuring out what you want and what you need, and you know, if this is something that resonates for you, if it's like hell yeah, like this sounds awesome, then follow that impulse. And
Yeah.
you know, thanks again for Magda being on. We appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you again soon for another episode. Thanks so
I'll
much
be here.
for coming on.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye.